Hello there, my name is Judge Prime. Welcome to another episode of Retro Stereo. This week marks the 22nd anniversary of the release of Biggie's debut album, Ready to Die. This album was released on September the 13th, 1994. This album is actually older than me, and Biggie recorded this album when he was about the same age as me. Listening to this album, Biggie Smalls went through a lot of shit. A lot of shit. To be like 21, 22 and to be talking about some of the things that Biggie is talking about here is just insane. And I think what makes this album so good is the narrating ability of Biggie Smalls. He's able to paint a picture so vividly. And even though the instrumentals or beats are good here, they don't overshadow or aren't even really the main attraction here. When I listen to this, I'm listening more and enjoying more Biggie's story and his charisma and flow rather than the quality or the attractiveness of the beats. While the beats do add an extra, backing to the songs and make them more gripping, they add this cinematic effect which keeps you enchanted and has your attention from the beginning throughout the album. They just are there to support the album and to support Biggie's lyrics. This album sort of shows why he is so loved. Despite the massive acclaim this album has, there are a couple of problems that Biggie ran into. First of all, Diddy was fired from Uptown Records and they stopped recording this album. So it started recording in 1993, it stopped recording. In fact, Biggie had gone back to selling drugs, and then Diddy had started Bad Boy Records, and then they started recording in 1994. Also, they had suffered a couple of lawsuits for using samples illegally. The samples were Gimme the Loot and Machine Gun Flex. So they had to have those samples removed and they had to pay about $4 million in damages, I guess. There were a few setbacks with this album. Also, this is the only album that was released during Biggie's lifetime. His second album, Life After Death, was released a couple of weeks actually after Biggie had died. Listening to this album, you notice that Biggie sort of dances around or was very drawn to death. I think in his track Suicidal Thoughts, which we're going to talk about, he talks about death calling him. Now, I'll go through some of the tracks. I won't go through all. There are about 17 tracks on this album, and I think 19 on the bonus album. I'd say this is an album you need to listen to and experience yourself. So the intro of this album, I'd say one of the best intros I've heard in all hip-hop. It sort of gives you a fast track of everything that has happened in Biggie's life prior to the point where he's recording the album. Even though he does go through his past experiences during the course of this album, this is just like, a 3-minute dash, a 3-minute, summary of Biggie's life from his birth and then being a troubled adolescent to robbing a train to going to jail and then leaving jail and being like, yo, I'm never coming back here, I'm changing my life. And that's sort of where the album now takes off. Also, you'll notice in each point or each segment of Biggie's life, you hear a different track or song playing in the background. You hear funk in the beginning, you hear old school hip hop in the middle, and then you hear a Snoop Dogg song towards the end of this song. So it's kind of going through each era. I think that was brilliantly done. There are the little things here and there that are done in this album that make it so good, and you could really say that this is a classic album that will stand the test of time. Listening to this, it's still very enjoyable. Thoroughly enjoyable. So, in the intro, he also talks about, he has big plans and he's never going back to jail. You have the track Things Done Changed, and he basically on this track, he's, talking about how life used to be and what used to go on, and now where he's at. Talking about how their parents, he raised them, but now they're even afraid of them, that they have to call the city to come and take care of them. Talking about if he wasn't in the rap game, he would still be slinging crack. If you talk slick, you're going to get your neck slit quick. He also talks about how his mum has breast cancer, so you shouldn't bother asking him why he's stressed. Like, a lot of things are on his mind. The next track, Gimme the Loot, basically talking about theft. Towards the end of this track, you hear a story about how there are cops around Biggie, and he's like, nah, don't worry, they're just getting donuts. And then it's like, nah, they're looking at you now. And then he's like, okay, get your boots strapped, because I'm shooting my way out of this. There's no way I'm gonna be stuck up in a chase. So get ready, because we're gonna shoot this out. And just the great little, the gunshots here, the storytelling, and the way he interacts, like it's a conversation. Listening to Biggie, it's more like you're in the conversation. It's like the way he raps is like it's a back and forth conversation he's having with people, and it just makes it that much more interactive. And you also have the gunshots, like I said, which add this whole cinematic influence, this whole, atmosphere that you're really in the situation with Biggie. It gives you a very good insight into the life of crime, into the life of, drug dealing, and so on and so forth. Machine Gun Flex, basically talking about guns here. He says he'll be in your ass like a wedgie. Sticks and stones may break bones, but a gat will kill you quicker. Again, just great bars, I have to say. Someone, like I said, at his age, at my age, talking about the things he's talking about, and painting this story so vividly with just words is just simply breathtaking. So the next track, which I found interesting, was Warning. Someone paging him early in the morning, and he's like, what the fuck, why are you paging me? And then calling the person and finding out it's someone from the barbershop who's giving him a warning about people who are plotting against him. And an interesting line here is like, niggas wanna stick him for his paper. He also says there'll be slow singing and flower bringing if his alarm system starts ringing. Basically, like I said, great flows, great storytelling. Ready to Die, talking about how he's ready to die, basically. And like I said at the very beginning, when you listen to Biggie's music, you know that this was someone who was depressed, who was suicidal. There's even a song on here which I'll talk about next, Suicidal Thoughts. He was someone who was depressed. He was someone who I felt wasn't really feeling life. It's very haunting listening to this album, because you hear him dance around the topic of death and how he wants to die, and then seeing him die not long after, it's very haunting. So like I said, Suicidal Thoughts. Basically, he says on this track, he wants to go to hell. He doesn't deserve to go to heaven because he's a piece of shit. In fact, he doesn't even care because he wants to be wearing black. He doesn't like white. And, he talks about how he's disrespected his mother, and his mom probably hates him, and how his mom probably wishes she had an abortion. Talks about if he were to die, there'd be people who would be fronting that they really cared about him. Meanwhile, they were actually really happy. He talks about his baby mother who would pretend to be sad that he had died, but would have actually been happy because she knows that he was fucking her sister or something like that. A very chilling track. A track that, that digs deep within Biggie himself and sort of spills all his remorse. It's a very remorseful track, spills all his remorse, and, just talks about how, in retrospect, he is guilty and is ashamed of what he has done, and as so feels like the only atonement for his sin would be to die and go to hell. Now, with this album, listening to it, like I said, it feels definitely very eerie. I don't know, it just feels a certain type of way. It's enjoyable, but it's balanced in that you feel, like you're grooving 1 minute, and then you're like, damn, the next minute it's like, damn, like this is some real shit. And he definitely talked about very sensitive things. He talked about very personal things. I'd say the way he talked about crime was a bit, that's a bit too revealing, but he didn't hold anything back, and this was definitely a story just about him. And looking at the way people talk about the exact same topics today, you can see why a lot of people would say we missed the old hip-hop. It's just a phenomenal album. I would say if you haven't listened to this album yet, you have to. You can't claim to be a fan of hip-hop without listening to this album. It's just a great album. It's a masterpiece, and definitely recommend it. Also, this is also the anniversary of the death of Tupac himself. Rest in peace, Tupac. Rest in peace, Big. You see a lot of people bring up these topics of would they still be as, iconic if they were still alive. In my honest opinion, I don't think so. I don't think they would have. They're like, when you talk about Tupac and Biggie, they're like God level. They are God level rappers. But hey, those are just my opinions, Let me know what you think about Ready to Die album. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like. If you're new around here, why not click subscribe? My name is Judge Prime. Rest in peace Biggie, rest in peace Tupac. Go out and support this music in their memory, you know. And yeah, support hip hop. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.